Okay, so now that we know how convex hull is going to treat this shape, what happens if we actually did want to have like a convex physics or collision to this, so we could actually walk in here? Okay, well, what we'd have to do is to break this mesh down into simpler components. Let me just hide this grease pencil there, and I'm going to start a new one, and let's make this one a green. Okay, so we'd have to break this mesh down into simpler components. So what we would do is we would kind of look at our mesh and think, right, there's one component. There's another component. Here's another one. And of course we got this one here. Okay, so from our 8 original elements we broke it down into 4 simpler components, and if we look at each of these green boxes, they are all convex hull. They all follow that same no right turn rule. Start at any point, and as you follow around they always turn left, all straight, but in this case left. Okay, so these will decompose, these 4 components will decompose into convex hull meshes. Okay, so let's put this into practice a little. I have another mesh here, which is just a simple wall, kind of U-shaped, offset U-shaped. Okay, if we look at this, and there we go. I just want to change the colour of this. If we look at this, we need to break this down because it'll decompose. Let me get a straighter line than that. That looks awful. Okay, it will decompose into this kind of shape. Okay, which is no good. What we actually want is to break this mesh down into simpler forms. Okay, so we would have activate this layer. One element here, one element over here, and one element here. Okay, so we'd have 3 elements to this mesh as opposed to this kind of one here. Alright, so how do we do that? Well, it's a simple wall, and the first thing I would do when working with this mesh is select it. I would copy it, so Shift D to copy. I would press enter to drop that copy. I would then move that copy to another layer, so M, and let's move it to the layer below. Okay, so we've got the original mesh on this layer, and we've got a copy on this layer. Okay, let's edit this mesh, and let's go into a face select mode. Okay, now all you really need are planes. You don't need thick geometry unless you've got a thick wall, and then you'll have issues of walking into the wall and sinking inside it. But you know, generally all you need is planes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these 3 planes. Okay, I'm going to invert my selection, so Control I, so these 3 planes are unselected, and I'm going to delete these faces. So X delete faces, which just leaves me with these 3 faces. Okay, now if we look at this again, it's still going to decompose into this wrong convex hull shape. Okay, it's still going to decompose into that. So we don't want that. Okay, what we need to do is to split these meshes up further. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my vertex select mode. Okay, I'm going to select this vertex here, and I'm going to just press that V key to rip the vertices apart, to make it actually two vertices. So if I press V, okay, you can see it's actually separated those vertices. Okay, I'll do the same with the other four. So V, V, V. Okay, so I can now select, if I'm very careful, okay, well, that'll work, this vertex and this vertex here, okay, and I can just move them away ever so slightly. Okay, so we've created this little gap. Now, although this gap will be in a physics, the trick is to make it small enough that you're not going to be able to walk through it, so then it won't be seen. Okay, and we can do the same over here. Well, I have to be a bit more selective in this. There we go. And just move it away slightly. Okay, so now what I've actually got here is three separate planes, three separate hulls, if you like, convex hull. Okay, so now when this decomposes, okay, we're going to have one hull along here, one hull along here, and one hull along here. Okay, right, so we've got our two meshes. We've got our wall mesh, and I'm going to export this wall mesh. So File, Export Collada, and let's go desktop. Let's call it U-shape wall. Okay, export that as Collada. I'm going to come across to my physics or my collision mesh. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to export that to Collada, and we'll call it U-shape physics, and make sure that's in my desktop so I can find it. Okay, now let's jump across into Second Life. Let me just get rid of these. There we go. Let's jump across and settle up. Now I'm actually under the ocean here, and the reason I'm under the ocean is because I'm going to do something in a minute which makes things very hard to see unless you're on SL terrain. If you're on a platform, it shows that as well, and we don't really want that. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's go ahead and upload our wall. So build, upload mesh model, and it was called U-shape wall. Open. Okay, so we can see our wall in our previewer. Okay, this kind of U-shape. Fantastic. And let's upload our physics with it. So we'll go to the physics tab, level of detail, we'll choose from file, and we'll browse to a U-shape physics file, which is there. Okay, so now when we look around, or kind of scroll around the wall, we see we've got these kind of yellow boxes and things. This one isn't highlighted yellow. Okay, but one thing we always have to do, you can see how our physics does match the shape of the wall as well. One thing we always have to do is analyze. So when we analyze, you'll see that this changes colours somewhat, which means that the uploader has calculated where the physics should be, and it's quite happy with it. So at this point you can check around, make sure the physics is conforming the way you want it to. Okay, right, don't worry about anything else down here to simplify, just leave all of these as default. Okay, let's just name this U-shape and calculate the weights and fees, and it's showing my wall the land impact of 0.5. The physics is actually 0.3. The server impact is 0.5, which is highest. Let's go ahead and upload this wall. Okay, which is U-shape, and I'm just going to res it down here on the ocean floor, as it were, and we can see we've got our wall. Okay, so just scroll that around it a bit. We've got our wall there. Right, Now, whenever we want physics like this, we always have to make sure that in our Features tab, we set the physics shape type to prim. It says convex hull at the minute, which is default. We need to set it to prim. The reason being, if we left it at convex hull, okay, we'll find that we won't be able to walk into our wall or into the corner of our wall like we wanted. Okay, whereas if we set it to prim, we can walk right up into the corner. Okay, now why does this happen? Well, if you've got your advanced menu activated, you can also, from the advanced menu, show develop menu. Okay, in the develop menu, if we come to render metadata and we look at the physics shapes, okay, you can see how the screen's turned lovely, but we can actually see the shape of the physics making around the wall. Okay, we can see the gap that we left that will define these two holes, separate these two holes, so we haven't got this right hand turn here, and obviously the same on this side. You can see that gap there. Okay, right, so this means that our avatar is going to collide with these blue shapes, which is exactly what we wanted. Now if I turn this back to convex hull, you can see that it goes back to that expected shape of the convex hull. Okay, so although we use convex hull physics, what we actually did is we broke those holes down into separate components. Okay, 3 separate components, which then allows us to walk into the corner. And that is the very basics of second line physics and collisions.